Hi, I'm Nicole Kemper, and I am a writer, filmmaker, and performer living in Atlanta, Georgia. And I've committed to shooting at least one roll of 8mm film per month, sometimes more when I can't control myself. So I took those 3 rolls of film that I shot in the Canon 1014S before it shit the bed, and I brought it into DaVinci and I did some tweaks, and I'm pretty happy with the results. So let's take a look. So last time I did this, I took it, I just took the big chunk of footage from Premiere and directly sent it by XML to DaVinci. And then once I got into DaVinci, I was like, well, I can't color correct this thing as one long chunk. So I cut it up in DaVinci, which is fine. You can edit in DaVinci. People do it all the time. In fact, a lot of people like editing in DaVinci. I'm just not as comfortable using it as an editor. I've mostly used it for color grading. So this time I went ahead and cut up the footage in Premiere first. I actually took all 3 rolls and separated them so I could kind of do one roll at a time. Cut it into chunks, exported in XML, sent it over to DaVinci, and that's where I did all of my color grading. It took me a little bit of time to figure out exactly what my steps in the process were. I've color graded motion picture film before, but it's been a while, and I think color correcting Super 8 is honestly, it's a little different than color grading 16 or Super 16, which makes sense because they're smaller gauge, and so they're just like a little bit different in terms of what you can do with them. And also I feel like the files that I've gotten back, these like really basic scans from Pro 8, look great. Don't get me wrong, they look incredible. I'm very happy with them. These really basic scans don't really give you the option of doing like a log file, which is like a really flat, no color grading. So they do what is called best light, which means they do like a real overall like general sort of pass on the color grading, and they've done a really nice job. But it does I think probably like limit your some of the things. I think it does make it a little bit harder to kind of stretch and pull things, but once I got in there and started playing around, I did figure it out. So sort of my general process is to go with the fixing the exposure first, and so that's what I did. Then I would remove the color cast, which there's a pretty obvious color cast on a lot of the footage. It was kind of like this green, sort of like cyan, sort of like part of the color spectrum that sort of all the footage kind of had that on it. When I was watching the raw footage, I noticed it most in the 50D, and I just don't know if that's because I very stupidly went out and shot with it towards the end of the day when I was like, oh, it's gonna be gold now, it's gonna be beautiful. But it's like, no, 50D, you should you should be shooting that in bright sunlight. So I'm looking forward to redoing that experience. I still think it came out really nice, but it definitely had this, like, of all the footage, it had the most color cast to it. So once I kind of figured out, like, okay, which of these tools is going to be best for removing that, I was able to do that. I like my images really saturated, so I boosted the saturation a bit. And I kind of went through and did that on all of them. And there was one image in particular of a couple like dancing that was really dark, and I was able to sort of bring that up a bit. Fortunately, DaVinci is really powerful tool and was able to really like bring out whatever was there in the shot. And so I think we ended up with something pretty nice. I really liked what came out of the 200T, and I didn't bother putting a daylight filter or anything like it on there, but it obviously, whatever internal filter was in there, like, it did pretty good. Again, just like all the other footage, it did have this sort of like slightly sort of cyan color cast to it, but it was not hard to get rid of that. I actually got a roll back from Negative Space, and they did some scans on some really old film for me, and of course they didn't do any color grading, so it's flat log color space. And I'm interested to see what the experience of color grading that is going to be like. Is it going to be any easier? I would expect that it would be, but we'll see. I also, I think I shot that that one was shot indoors, so it has different problems, but we'll take a look at that when we get to those. Some of the footage was slightly overexposed, so I had to correct for that. It was really hard to pull back on some of those highlights, but I did my best. I think it was really noticeable to me that at first I thought maybe the camera was set to like do a fade up, and I think maybe there were a couple times where maybe I had pulled the wrong switch and was doing that. But I noticed in a lot of shots that when you start the as I'm going through my frame, it was pretty clear that when you pull the the trigger to begin shooting, it does, like, the exposure, it does take a minute to catch up. So I would like to try some manual exposure on that camera if I can get it into good working condition again. But yeah, I think if I could try it with some manual exposure, I think I would like to see what those results look like. Another thing that I tried with this footage was I tried stabilization in DaVinci, which I was really happy with. There's a couple of different ways to stabilize footage. What you're really trying to battle against is to not see any like sort of artifacting or like warping as the software tries to struggle with like stabilizing your footage. I noticed especially when I zoomed in, and this is partly like me and not having the most steady hands, but also I think anytime you're like zooming in to an extreme level, like if you're not on a tripod, it's like really hard to keep it steady. But DaVinci does a really excellent job of stabilizing. It did give it a bit of this like dreamy, sort of like floaty, almost like steady glide quality, which I don't know is something that I would always want. So that's certainly something to think about. But if you've got some footage that's a little bit shaky, DaVinci does an incredibly good job with stabilizing that footage. It, of course, you're always gonna, it's gonna crop a little bit because in order to stabilize the footage, it does have to zoom in a bit. So that's something to consider. So I've considered that maybe like if I'm trying to shoot something that's, where I'm really zoomed in, like maybe like zoom out just like a bit larger, like don't get so exactly the framing that I want, so that I have some room there to crop in if I need to do a stabilize. So just kind of thinking about that as I'm framing it, that might be something that I do in the future, because it does change your composition a little bit. Okay, so some reflections on shooting those first three test rolls. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? I got carried away. I just got really excited. I had a bunch of film, and also I think I didn't trust myself. Like I'd shoot a roll and then I would go, what if I mess that up? I'm not gonna have anything to show for it. And then I would go and shoot the other roll, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, but like today's like a brighter day. Maybe I should go out. This day was really overcast. Anyway, I got a little carried away, and so I'm gonna try to like I'm gonna try to rein it in a little bit in the future, but we'll see how that goes. So that's one, is maybe to just like really commit to like 1 or 2 rolls a month. It also is a little bit more intensive on the color grading, of course, when we've got like more rolls to deal with. Other things, I think the thing that I'm coming away with is that I really did, and I'm saying did in the past, like I'm never going to shoot with this camera again. I suppose it's still in my future that I could get the camera serviced. So that might be something to consider. The lens is really nice. I was really happy with a lot of the images. Not super in love with the auto exposure and like it kind of like fading up. But I mean, generally speaking, I do have a little bit of sadness. I guess that's the feeling I'm left with, is a little bit of sadness because I like the images that I captured. But I know that that soon after, and you can see the point, I mean, we watched it last week, but you can see the point where, I'm shooting the slow motion and the cartridge just jams up. And so that, I don't know if that's what led to the sticky trigger problem that I was having, or if it was just kind of inevitable. It certainly was fine for like the first 2 rolls. And it was like, as soon as I tried to use that slow motion or that sort of that high frame rate is when the problems arose. So I don't know, maybe if I just get it into good working order and I never try to shoot in a high frame rate again with that camera, it'll be fine. So I guess that's my personal reflection, is maybe don't get too attached to a camera from, the 1970s, because these things you know, sometimes they break. Well, that's it for this video. If you liked what you saw, you can subscribe to Critical Crop Top on YouTube. If you'd like more of stuff like this, you can find my blog, 50 Foot Woman, on Substack and Tumblr, where I share these videos as well as diary entries about different, you know, motion picture and still photography events, photo walks and things that I've gone to, personal reflections about my learning process with still photography and motion picture film. And also I share some images of some still photography that I've been doing. So until next time, thank you for watching, and let's shoot some more film, you guys.